Yes, there are more than 4 great powers of chaos in Warhammer 40K. In fact, according to a PDF Games Workshop put out in 2023, there are indeed 8. Now we know the big 4 that have been in the setting for years: Khorne the Blood God, Nurgle the Plague Father, Tzeentch the Lord of Fates, and Slaanesh the Warp's, fetishist and enjoyer of adult activities. So what is this document, and who are these other chaos powers? Well, my friends, it is no coincidence that the symbol of chaos is the 8-pointed star. Okay, yeah, Games Workshop 100% just ripped that off straight from Michael Moorcock's Aetheric. But there does seem to be 4 other realms of chaos and entities that do or don't yet exist that rule over those aspects of reality. Like Slaanesh, when she was born, she became eternal. As a creature of the warp, she didn't exist in real space until her birth tore through here. And I'm putting birth in air quotes, but she's always existed in warp space, as that is how time works there, to simplify it greatly. So the document that this comes from is a PDF for the Horus Heresy game that Games Workshop shared on the Warhammer Community page in 2023. It is a campaign book, The Burning of Omn Mot, and is part of the exemplary battles in the Age of Darkness. I put a link to it in the description so you can check it out for yourself, as it is very enlightening. Even if you don't play Horus Heresy, it is full of lore on chaos and demons. So at this point in the setting, we're looking at demons in a different way. They're more associated with concepts than the gods, as the Loyalists certainly don't know what or who Nurgle is, but they sure do know a corrupted plague zombie demon when they see it. But the same kind of thinking goes for most of the traitors too. They don't yet understand the ruinous powers much themselves. Chaos is still new, conceptually at least, to all of humanity at that point. So this PDF is pretty awesome, and it has the rules for demons like Samus in it. But the best part is the chart that details the 8 domains of chaos, and the sort of 9th domain in Chaos Undivided. But they don't call these the same things we do here in the 41st-ish millennium. So for example, the influence and essence of the blood god Khorne is known as the Aetheric dominion of heedless slaughter. Nurgle's influence is conceptualized as the Aetheric dominion of putrid corruption. Tzeentch's is the Aetheric dominion of encroaching ruin, and Slaanesh's Aetheric dominion is of rapturous sensation. But there's also the primordial annihilator, which demons like Samus are aspects of, and it is basically Chaos Undivided, through the archaic lens of how the first people to experience chaos looked at it. And the other 4 dominions, the Aetheric dominions of Formless Distortion, Infernal Tempest, Ravenous Dissolution, and Malevolent Artifice. Pretty cool, huh? Now this article may have flown under the radar, but it is awesome and gives us some pretty amazing lore. And we know who are the actual denizens of the warp, who are contenders at least, for 2 of these positions. It is obvious at this point to me that Vashtor is the ruler of Malevolent Artifice. But in my opinion, the book is heavily hinting. No, that's not the right terminology. How about strongly suggesting that the Lord of Ravenous Dissolution is actually Malice? So let's take a look at what the PDF says about these dominions. First we'll look at the big 4, and then we'll get to the 4 lesser known ones and the clues that Vashtor and Malice are indeed who rule 2 of these obscure dominions. And I have to say, just as an aside, that as a Chaos player since 3rd edition 40K, and as a guy who wanted to play Chaos since like 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Battles, this is a lot of fun for me. So the Dominion of Khorne, yeah, known as Heedless Slaughter, it says, the dark fury of battle and the red joy of life's final end. For some among the hordes of the warp, the only goal was to fight and to die. It mattered not where or why, as long as blood flowed. Such vile entities would appear garbed in the trappings of conquerors and executioners, caring only for the tally of skulls and death they might reap from the mortal world, irrespective of such concerns as friend or foe. Pretty good description of Khorne's demons and followers. I can dig it, it feels right. Okay, so Nurgle's dominion, putrid corruption, says, a slow corruption, rotting away body and soul, with no final release in death. Among the hosts of chaos, there were those who cared nothing for victory or defeat, only that suffering was spread to as many as possible. Such creatures were ushered forth into the material world in a miasma of disease and filth, content to spread their vile gifts to the world of mortals. Yeah, that's Plague Bearers to a T and Nurgle's followers. Keep in mind this is basically a whole book on demons, and it is more focusing on what you might summon out of the warp and have to fight or use to fight your foes on your behalf than it is actually focusing on where the demons come from, the aforementioned Aetheric dominions. But we can glean a lot of information from this. Tzeentch's dominion of encroaching ruin, I'm assuming. With Tzeentch, I could see his dominion being one of the others listed later, but it does have the other 3 of the big 4 listed on the first page. So I do believe this is Tzeentch's dominion as it can be found there as well. Literally the first entry. Okay, that said, it says, chaos in its purest form is a terror that few can stand before and remain sane. It hungers only for destruction, that all things mortal meet their predestined end and crumble into dust to be forgotten. To this singular end it moves inexorably, driven by a nightmarish purpose which subsumes the petty divisions of demonkind. Okay. So Slaanesh's dominion of rapturous sensation says, a maddening screech of sensation and wild impulses. For some among the numberless tide of chaos, the ends of violence truly mattered not, merely that they were there to take part and to experience its vicissitudes? Okay, inflicting overwhelming pain and gorging on mortal spear. These demons reveled in the sensory overload of war, bounding over shell-sundered battlefields to deliver blissful death as they exulted in each blinding flash and deafening blast. Okay, so that all seems pretty straightforward. Chaos as we know it, just described through an earlier lens of understanding, though it is still all based in the same reasoning and archetypal understanding. But we already went over how there's 4 other archetypes. So what do they say? Well, the Aetheric dominion of Formless distortion says, even as demons manifest as obscene parodies of mortal forms, the true essence of chaos is endlessly shifting and unknowable, twisting, changing, and perverting everything it touches. Some demons who cross the veil into real space embodied this ceaseless distortion to its fullest extent, shaping themselves into roiling agglomerations of immaterial flesh and bone, for whom death was simply one component of the eternal metamorphosis they would inflict upon the material world. Pretty gnarly, huh? Yeah, that's sick. I love it. If you've read The Black Legion and Talon of Horus, then you know who the Warp Ghosts are, and I believe they may serve this power ultimately, though I don't believe this is where Vashtor or Malice's dominion is. Okay, next is the Aetheric dominion of Infernal Tempest. This one is the weirdest to me, and the hardest to understand. I feel like I am more confused after reading it, but it is interesting indeed. It says, some hosts of demonkind brought forth a maelstrom of raw warp stuff with them, manifesting the energy of the immaterium as sheer elemental power. Around these entities roiled tempests of prismatic balefire, the air riven with crackling arcs of unreal lightning, as the earth twisted into fragments of shimmering crystal. To these demons, there was no higher purpose than the promulgation of that power and of its profligate use on the battlefields of the mortal realm. Dude, this is way too wordy to even read, let alone say in one take. It's like when Harrison Ford told George Lucas, nobody talks like that. I don't think I've ever used promulgation more than 3 or 4 times in my life, and I know I've never said profligate before. Well, at least they're reminding us that Warhammer is for nerds by nerds, I guess. And now the fun part. We get to the last 2 dominions. The Aetheric dominion of Malevolent Artifice says, just as chaos reflects back a twisted mockery of humanity's every facet, so too is the very drive to create perverted into a malevolent and destructive force within the immaterium. Conjured forth into real space, such demonkind harness the works of mortals as a vector for their own annihilation, Their monstrous machine entity forms at once a mimicry of flesh and artifice, every action made to demonstrate their supremacy over both mortal beings and everything they deigned to create. So yeah, Vashtor much? This is totally the Archifane. That's pretty obvious. Now, if he isn't the end-all be-all lord of this dominion, then he's definitely in contention for it. He's one of the finalists for sure. And last we get to the Aetheric dominion of Ravenous dissolution, which says, "Such is the hatred that swirls within the warp that it encompasses all things, and like the dragon of eternity that feasts upon its own tail, this hatred extends even to itself. To expect rational and sane logic from creatures such as these would be foolish, for chaos was both its name and nature. Yet, in its self-destructive hatred, there was no ally to be found, only a new and more unpredictable foe." Yeah, that's malice 100%. Chaos that attacks and hates itself. It gets stronger as it consumes other chaos. Yeah, and the hate part, it couldn't be more clearly spelled out. Yes, there are 4 main chaos gods running around in the game, but there are 8 in the lore, so some may be as yet unborn, as the birth of demons and warp gods is a fickle thing, and they exist for all eternity in both future and past once they exist. So yes, this is to me confirmation that they want to expand the Chaos Pantheon. To me, it doesn't really matter if they bring these to the tabletop or not. Just having them in the lore is pretty insane. But this book does have a ton of rules for demons from all of these dominions and the Primordial Annihilator rules, which is what Samus uses. How do you guys think this is going to affect the lore? Will it still go under the radar, only known to niche players of Horus Heresy who were lucky enough to notice this obscure PDF when it came out? I'd like to thank the viewer who brought this PDF to my attention a few weeks back. Much appreciation, for real. Anyway, it makes sense to me. I think it makes the setting, at least the warp, even more interesting. So who or what would be the lords of the other 2 dominions, of Formless Distortion and Infernal Tempest? I have no theories on these warp gods, and who would take the roles or become the lords of these dominions? I mean, Eris Discordia? What about just straight up Satan or something to that effect? I will say that I am super stoked on Malice and Vashtor having a piece of the pie each. I mean, what's not to love about cyborg demons? That's so over the top, like right out of Heavy Metal the movie or something. Yes, I'm a sucker for demons with bionic implants, laser guns, and cybernetic augmentation. Just the thought of that is super cool to me. And Malice is just too awesome to leave out. I mean, he's been there the whole time, just waiting in the shadows, growing in power and hate. Thanks so much to my subscribers and massive love to my channel members. I appreciate you guys more than I could even tell you.